The title of the work is Spires of Undifferentiated Being. Spires come from the idea of kind of like a monument. When people think of the spire, it's like a monument, tall and pointed upward monument. I know it looks very flat. There's nothing of the work that represents spires. But why I choose that title is because some of the shape here, they looks like a seed. They're like pointy, like the flame, and then the hands, and then all like the bottom part of the hand looks like a seed. I guess you can see it like as if like looking at the building, but not from the front, but from the top. Like something that grows up. And meanwhile, the other words, undifferentiated beings, I think I wanted to talk about the shape, the work, as traces of the process that I went through in the studio, in which I was involved very much physically in the work. So it's like the idea of a being, like existence that is really undefined, that very just existing, just simply existing. My name is Albert Yonathan Setyawan. I guess people call me Albert. This work is created specifically for this Asia-Pacific Triennial. In art school, I was very much interested in printmaking, I think because of the materiality of it, with papers, ink, and all different varieties of techniques of like image making. And then the first time I went to ceramic studio, and then my mind, just like my choice, completely changed. This is what I like to do. I think it's really interesting because of the process, like the whole scope of the process, that you can fire this clay, you can apply glaze, there's all these different colors and techniques that involves in it. Contrary to what people might think, I think the way the works appear, it's very methodical, very systematic, visually. The way I approach it in the very beginning is very intuitive. The symbols, the images, and everything comes from just sometimes something that I cannot explain conceptually or like logically why I'm interested in this, like the hands, the eyes, the flame, the fire, and everything. A lot of people ask that kind of questions, like what is the meaning behind this symbol? How do you approach this symbol? It's hard to give like an exact definition about the symbols because they don't really refer to any specific, but there are certain parts of them have some religious associations to it, like the hands, I think, in the flame, the fire, like some of the birds, like the tiny birds, they sort of represent maybe like the idea of a spirit or something. How I see these individual shapes is I think of them as motifs, kind of textile motif, and how some images, some motifs in textiles appear in different design, but they don't become the same design, they become a different design, but just like these symbols always appear and reappear in different design. The idea of repetition leads to pattern. To create certain patterns, you need producing the shapes and stuff like that. And then the shape can be repeated, the exact shape, but then when it came out of the mold, it become like it's the same, but also it's not the same. So the idea of sameness and difference is there in the process. In this one, there's the image of the hand and the left hands and the flame. I always think of the flame as some kind of symbolic representations of the idea of an energy or like some life force. And also the fact that I'm working with clay, and then there's always some elements of heat and fires involved in it. It comes from that idea. And then the hand itself, I think, comes from that thing, the idea of labor. For me, at least personally, is a way for me to engage with the world. I think the hand represents that kind of engagement through that process of making. When I'm in the studio and do my practice, the whole making process is very much centered on the hands. And then I want to make something that sort of represents the idea of labor. I think the hands is the representations of labor. What is so important about working with clay, about working with this very analog and practical techniques? I think the most important thing is to be present and to actually physically involve in the process, which speaks to this idea of labor. Like you can just do 3D printing, you put your images in computer and then you get the result. Maybe you can like get a really good precise shape with 3D printing, but then you lose all the experience of making it, and then that's what I'm interested in. I think that's where it can be quite political in a way, and then I just see it as like a form of resistance. I think the general tendency what everything is like really going fast. I want to be very much involved in the process directly in the making of it, because I see it as a way for me to exist